Selesnya, green and white, Commander, three things that you love. And because you love those things, you are here because you want to know 10 Selesnya, green and white staples that can go in your favorite Commander deck right now. But first things first, welcome to Girudo, where you are never alone, your number one stop for all things Magic the Gathering. My name is Bobby Maximus. Now, you may have seen some of my other works, specifically Muscles and Magic the Gathering, but this here is a series called Commander for Dummies that I do exclusively for Girudo. Now, stay tuned for those Selesnya cards, but a little bit of background on this series. I started playing Magic the Gathering in 1994. I say playing, but truly I was more of a collector than a player. I started building complete sets. And the decks I had were 60-card kitchen table type decks that were made from extras. Over the years, I amassed a massive collection, and a few years ago, a couple of friends of mine convinced me to get into this game called Commander, EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander. The learning curve at first was massive. Like, listen, I wasn't new to Magic. I had over 40 complete sets. I had a bunch of 60-card sets, but Commander was a completely different game. And I had to do a lot of research on the internet. I had to ask a lot of questions. I had to play test a lot. And out of that, I developed a series of ideas, if you will, or a philosophy to help make Commander decks better. And one of the key tenets of that was coming up with staples that I could use in every Commander deck. So on Girudo, you will see my top 10 red staples, my top 10 green staples, my top 10 white staples, my top 10 black staples. This series is dedicated to giving you strategies, tips, and staples to make your Commander deck better. So with all that said, we're going to dive in there and we're going to talk about these Selesnya cards. But I do want to give you a little bit extra here today. Make sure that in addition to this video, you watch the top 10 green staples and the top 10 white staples, because obviously those will also go in your favorite Selesnya deck. All the cards today are true Selesnya cards, green and white. And that's where we're going to start the show. Now, before we get into these top 10 staples, we are going to talk about honorable mentions, all right? I always underpromise, I always overdeliver, and I want to give you more information as opposed to less. 10 cards is just not enough, all right? Not when there's 100 cards in a deck. So I'm going to give you a little bit extra. And where we're going to start today for the honorable mentions is we're going to talk about Selesnya lands that I absolutely love. The first one up is the Hushwood Verge. You tap it, you add a green mana, or you tap it, you add a white mana. But you can activate this only if you control a forest or a plains. I absolutely love the Verge cycle of lands, and this is a great one. Lush Portico from Murders at Karlov Manor. Now, completely unrelated to this video right here. Murders at Karlov Manor is one of the most underrated sets in Magic the Gathering. It got a lot of hate. I don't know if that was the art. I don't know what the deal was, the time of year it came out in. But I think it's absolutely fantastic, especially for these lands right here, the Surveil lands. It enters the battlefield tapped, and then when Lush Portico enters the battlefield, you may Surveil one. That means you look at the top card of your library, you put it into the graveyard, all right, or you put it back into your hand. It is an absolutely not into your hand. I am sorry, you put it back on the top of your library. But it's an absolutely incredible way to filter through cards in your deck. I absolutely love it. Canopy Vista. Canopy Vista enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Windswept Heath. You pay 1 life, you sacrifice it, you search your library for a forest or plains card, you put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So you can basically get whatever land you need, just a little bit of very simple and effective mana fixing. The Razor Verge Thicket. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. All right, another great land for Selesnya. Now, the ultimate Selesnya land, the Brushland. You add the colorless mana, or you can pay a life and you can add a green or a white. Now, these pain lands, these are the ultimate dual type lands for a Commander deck. And to show you how serious I am about them, let me reach up onto my shelf there. But I have a bunch of these on hand at all times for all 10 color combinations. I use these like crazy. If I could give you one tip for deck building, it's to order a bunch of those and have those in reserve, because those are the first lands I reach for. Now, I said that was the ultimate land. It was kind of a lie. In theory, it's the ultimate land because it's a land people have access to. The ultimate land is a true duel. Now, because I was collecting since 1994, I am lucky to have about 100 of these type of dual lands, but they are not inexpensive. $400, $500. I think an Underground Sea right now goes for about $1,000. These are not accessible to most people. If you want a replacement for these, it is always this. These lands are super underrated, but they're super inexpensive as well. So that's why I say it is the ultimate land choice, even though in truth, we would all have a bunch of duels. So there's your land base for green and white. Now, we're going to move on to some other honorable mentions. But before I do, I want to say one more thing about your land base. Let's bring the lands back. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not flashy. I know they're not the funnest cards, but the land base is the foundation upon which the rest of your commander deck builds, all right? I am dead serious when I say that. The better your land base, the better your deck is going to play. Lands are the first thing people cut. That's a big mistake. I run 38 lands in every single one of my commander decks, and the land base is the first thing they neglect because they want these flashy, exciting cards. Trust me, focus on your land base first. Everything else will fall into place. With that said, let's go over some honorable mentions I have. Now, I did tell you a lie, a little fib. I'm sorry. I said I didn't have any monocolor cards in here. I said you could go watch the green and the white series that's already on Girudo. But I had to include this because it does make green and white citizen creature tokens. So it's kind of a Selesnya card, if you will. All right. You pay 2 mana and X, and then create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn. I've literally used this card just paying a 1x to make a token and give all my creatures indestructible. It's super usable in a bunch of different scenarios. And if I have a bunch of mana, I can flood the creature with these, or the battlefield with these 1/1 creatures. So a super usable card, Grand Crescendo. We have Farmer Cotton. Absolutely love Farmer Cotton. Love the Lord of the Rings set. I think it's the greatest Magic the Gathering set ever. When Farmer Cotton enters the battlefield, create X 1/1 white halfling creature tokens and X food tokens. Food tokens for life. But these creature tokens come in handy as well. A key in these Selesnya decks is there's going to be a lot of creature tokens, a lot of 1/1 counters created. And they might not seem like anything at the start, but if you can pump them up with a creature anthem, and that's the next card we're going to look at, like the Anthem of Champions, creatures you control get +1/+1. You get a bunch of these anthem type cards in there, or like the ultimate anthem, if you will, Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite. Your creatures get +2/+2. All other creatures get -2/-2. But you can pump these little 1/1s up. They can become absolutely deadly. So love Farmer Cotton, and I love a good creature anthem. There is the Anthem of Champions. Next one up, Garnet, Princess of Alexandria. Now, the reason I included this is because we've seen a lot of these sagas lately. We saw them in Avatar, we saw them in Lord of the Rings, we saw them in Final Fantasy, and I don't think they're going anywhere, all right? This has lifelink, and whenever Garnet attacks, you may remove a lore counter from each of any number of sagas you control. Put a 1/1 counter on Garnet for each lore counter removed this way. It's a great way to reset the clock on your sagas. I absolutely think that's a phenomenal card if you're building a saga-type deck. Next, Jukai Naturalist. Really good for Enchantress-type decks, but a lot of decks these days have a lot of enchantments, so this can be useful. It's got lifelink, and enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I talk about mana ramp a lot. Mana ramp is super important in a game of Commander, but one of the things that I refer to, I don't even know if there's a proper term in Magic the Gathering, but I call it non-traditional mana ramp, is a way to reduce the casting cost of your things. That becomes really, really important. So the Jukai Naturalist, an honorable mention. Karametra, God of Harvests. It's a big casting cost, but I'm okay with that for what it does. It's got indestructible. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, it is not a creature. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card. put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. I always talk about these ways to get ahead in the game of Commander. Now, overall mana value of the cards is important. We will talk about that a little bit in the later minutes of the episode, if you will. But the three key areas I really focus on are tutors, mana ramp, and card draw. And this takes care of the mana ramp because we're going to be casting a lot of creature spells. We're going to flood the battlefield with lands. Super important. The Wilt Leaf Liege, I talked about the importance of anthems in Selesnya. Other green creatures get +1/+1. White creatures get +1/+1. If a spell or ability causes you to discard this card, it goes right onto the battlefield. Great card. And then Privileged Position. It's a high casting cost, but worth it. Other permanents you control have hexproof. It means my stuff cannot be the target of your spells. Absolutely killer in a game of Commander. Trust me on that. Privileged Position is a great card. And look at all the cards that came from Double Masters. What an incredible set that was. All right, there's a bunch of them here. I've got a bunch more in your top 10. I thought there was more than that in the honorable mentions, but they made the top 10. Double Masters is one of my favorite sets. All right, here we go. The meat and potatoes of the show, what you're really here for. Let's look at these cards, these top 10 cards that I want you to put in your Selesnya deck. First one up, the Dauntless Escort. And there we go, another Double Masters card making a representation. Costs 3 mana. It's a 3/3. That's a great deal. Sacrifice Dauntless Escort. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn, like the Grand Crescendo, right? Making your creatures indestructible is absolutely massive, especially if you're trying to figure out blocks and things like that. And the fact you can do this at instant speed, kind of like a Selfless Spirit, is an insane card to have. Not enough people use that ability properly. This, to me, is one of those auto-includes in a Selesnya deck. Double Masters, again, well represented that set today. No lies told. Conclave Mentor. If one or more 1/1 counters would you put on a creature you control, that many +1/1/1 counters are put on that creature instead. When Conclave Mentor dies, you gain life equal to its power. Earlier, I had mentioned that there's a lot of 1/1 counters in Selesnya. You're going to put a lot of 1/1 counters on this card, and when it dies, you get the added bonus of gaining a bunch of life. So the Conclave Mentor, I think it's a great card. I don't see it used enough, and it's a low casting cost. Now, I promised to talk about this in the later minutes of the show. You know what? I'm just going to get to it right now. What is total mana value? It's all the symbols on the cards added together. So that's a 3. That's a 2. There's a total of 5. The Wilt Liege is a 4. That means 9 for those 3 cards. The total mana value of a deck is something that I look at. All the cards added together. By the way, lands have a mana value of 0. I like my decks to be under 200. 200 to me is like the marker where decks start to move fast. That said, 200 is still pretty high. You look at some insanely competitive bracket 4, bracket 5 decks, they're in the 130s. They're in the low 140s. So what I like is low casting cost cards that do a great job. And that's the theory behind power creep, right? Like imagine you could have 60 cards in your deck, 65 cards in your deck that were all 1-drops, but insanely powerful. Like you would never lose a game of Commander. So I like these low casting cost things because it keeps the total mana value down. Speaking of low casting cost cards that do work, Sithis, Harvest's Hand. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. Insane in an Enchantress deck. But in a normal deck where you're going to have a lot of enchantments, in Selesnya, you're going to have a lot of enchantments. Whenever you cast one, you're going to gain a life. And there's that card draw thing again, right? The 3 most important parts of a Commander deck are mana ramp, tutoring, and card draw. More card draw is better. And again, it's a low casting cost creature. Absolutely love it. Next card up, Dromoka's Command. You pay 2 mana, and it's an instant. Then you can choose 2. Prevent all damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. Great deal. Target player sacrifices an enchantment. Great deal. You do not play enough removement in your Commander deck. Not removement, removal. I am sorry, I cannot even talk today, but you do not play enough removal in your commander deck. And I'm guilty of the same thing. Like when I say that to you, I am actually saying it to me. I always want to put these like on theme cards, and I end up not having removal, and I don't have the answer to what my opponent's trying to do. So removal's massive. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature. There's that theme again. And then target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So just a super usable catch-all card. And I love cards like this in the instant speed. Next card up, speaking of Dromoka, a great stacks piece. Now, I just went on and on and on about low casting cost things. I'm okay having a few higher casting cost things in my deck as long as they do some real work, and they are powerful. And this card is powerful. This spell can't be countered. It's got flying and lifelink. It's a 5/7. It's going to be hard for people to block, and you're going to get lifelink all the time. And your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, so they can't do any nonsense or shenanigans. It is an insane stack piece. So Dragon Lord Dromoka, it's a great, great creature. Next card up, how are you going to get things like this with big casting costs out? The Fey Burrow Elder. Now listen, this card has an asterisk on it. I actually wasn't really going to include it in the Selesnya one because I use it a lot more in 5 and 4 color decks, all right? But you can use a lot of these cards in that. In a Selesnya deck, it is still useful, but the more colors you have in the deck, the better this thing gets. Vigilance, Fey Burrow Elder gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So in a Selesnya deck, if you have a green and a white permanent, you get a green and white mana every time you tap it. If you have 3 colors, you get 3 mana. If you have 4, you have 4. Like I said, more useful in a 5-color deck. And now for the Fey Burrow Elder, something that's going to help you get those higher casting cost creatures, higher casting cost spells out. It's a great mana ramp card, and I've talked about before the importance of mana ramp in a game of Commander. Now, there's a little bit of an asterisk next to this because it does work better in a 5 or 4 color deck, but it still does some real work for me in a 2-color deck like a true Selesnya deck. It's got Vigilance, and the Fey Burrow Elder gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So you have a green and white permanent out. Every time you tap it, you get a green and a white mana. Again, you can't have too much mana ramp. And in the Selesnya deck, I'm going to have a Birds of Paradise. I'm going to have a Land War Elves. I'm going to have a Fyndhorn Elves. I'm going to have a Fey Burrow Elder. All right. It's going to allow me maybe a Delighted Halfling, but it is a very inexpensive mana ramp card, and it does get better the more colors you have in a deck. So the Fey Burrow Elder, great card. Now, the next one is one of those cards that's completely boring, but I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm going to tell you right now, not enough people use the talismans. It drives me bonkers. Mana ramp is everything. I get it. Again, it's not sexy. It's not flashy. It's not fun, but it helps you cast things. It's super important. Check this out. This is a stack of extra cards I keep around that are absolute staples. And I'm going to show you something right now. Look at just the raw amount of talismans I have here. Just have these on hand like those Painlands because they are useful in any Commander deck ever. Believe me when I tell you that. If you have a Selesnya deck, arguably the first 3 cards you're going to put in your deck are a Soul Ring, an Arcane Signet, and this talisman, the Talisman of Unity. And that goes for any other deck you are going to build. Like in a 5-color deck, I'm really tempted to put like 10 of these in. That's crazy excessive. But hear me out. The more mana ramp you have, the better. They're super cheap and they work really well. So the Talisman of Unity, you made the list because you are that good. Now for the final 3. And what do you think they are? I'm going to tell you, they are incredible cards. The first one up, Captain Sisay, underutilized, all right? But a great card because it's a reoccurring tutor. Search your library for a legend or legendary card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. incredible. You can go search for any legendary card. There's a lot of creatures that are legendary. Planeswalkers are legendary. There's legendary artifacts like the Great Henge. There's legendary enchantments. Captain Sisay is a must. And back to the theme, mana ramp, tutors, card draw. Put this in your deck. Trust me, it does some real, genuine work. Speaking of tutors, here's a great Selesnya tutor, Eladamri's Call. Search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. In any Selesnya deck you're going to build, you're going to have one of these. You're going to have a worldly tutor. Now, some people don't play with tutors. They think it restricts the game style and it's unfair and blah, 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 blah. But if I'm building a competitive commander deck, I absolutely 1,000,000% want tutors. So I'm going to have a Captain Sisay. I'm going to have an Eladamri's Call. You better believe me on that. And the final card. There's one category I haven't talked enough about, and it's removal. You don't play with enough removal. I think I actually said that earlier in this video, but you don't. So I'm going to remind you again. And when I'm talking to you, I'm actually talking to me. But Aura Shards. Whenever a creature comes into play, you're going to have a lot of creatures in a Selesnya deck. That's the bread and butter. You can destroy a target artifact or enchantment. So just think, if you get this thing out early, the amount of creatures you have in your deck, the amount of just raw destruction you could do to the table. Removal is everything. Now, people will play creature removal, but they don't have enough artifact or enchantment removal, which is massive. Like if I'm building a Selesnya deck, I'm having the Aura Shards, I'm having a Path to Exile, I'm having a Swords to Plowshares, I'm having a Beast Within, I'm having a Generous Gift, all right? I'm having a Reclamation Sage. Like, I'm having all the cards to deal with threats. We don't have enough removal, and that's why Aura Shards is the grand champion of today's top 10 list. So to recap, in no particular order, Talisman of Unity, Fabro Elder, Dragonlord Dromoka, Dromoka's Command, Sithis, the Harvest Hand, the Conclave Mentor, the Dauntless Escort, Aura Shards, Eladamri's Call, and Captain Sisay. Don't forget about our honorable mentions. We had all those lands, all right? But then we also had the Wilt Leaf Liege, the Privileged Position, Karametra, Jukai Naturalist, Garnet Princess of Alexandria, the Anthem of Champions, Farmer Cotton, and the Grand Crescendo. And yeah, let's go over the lands here just because they are that important. We have the Savannah, the Brushland, the ultimate in my opinion. Like I said, you know my reasons why. Razorbridge Thicket, Windswept Heath, Canopy Vista, Lush Portico, and Hushwood Verge. And there you have it. There are your cards for a Selesnya deck. Now, watch the green video and the white video. 10 essentials here on Girudo. I make this series, Commander for Dummies, for Girudo. But watch those, because if you were to take a bunch of these true Selesnya cards, you would take 10 of the green cards and 10 of the white cards and put them in. You would have the basis of an incredible deck just based on that. Like, hear me out. You had these 10 cards. You took 10 white ones and 10 green ones. There's 30 cards. I play with 38 lands in my deck. You still have 32 cards to add. That's when you can tinker and individualize your deck. But if you just did that, you would be on an incredible path, an incredible starting point out on your commander journey. So there you have it. There's your Selesnya cards. Do me a favor. Subscribe, smash that like button, make some comments, get involved with the community at Girudo. You are never alone. In this here, I want to make this the most educational, the most fun, the most positive channel in the Magic the Gathering history, if you will. I say the Magic the Gathering, in Magic the Gathering history. We are here to have fun. We are here to have a better time. We are here to enjoy our Commander in Magic the Gathering experience, and that is everything that Girudo stands for. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.